So one of the things we like to do is start with some announcements or discussion points before we start the topic. I just thought I'd say a comment about in-person versus Zoom, because we were talking about this before a little bit. We have the same issue at my synagogue with Torah study that's like at 9 o'clock in the morning on Saturdays, that I'm one of the people who likes to stay in their sweats and just kind of sit there and do Torah study. But the problem with that is that the in-person feeling has much more of a community feel when everybody's together. So I think it's really awesome that Zoom is available because people can be there even if their schedules are tight. But it does cause a conflict with the kind of community building. So if you get a chance to come at the next small firm forum in person, I think it would be great if that could be your first choice.
And Sydney, what's the kind of protocol opportunity for people who are watching online to raise their hand or come on that's the question.
Yeah, that is up to our presenter. If you'd like people to put it in the chat, we can check it periodically, or if you'd like people to unmute themselves and just speak their question if they have it, that's up for you as well.
About the reactions thing, they can raise their hand.
Yeah, they can also raise their hand and you can call on them. That is fully up to you.
Yeah, I think we ought to do that. I'm probably not going to be able to see hands raising. So somebody said, hey, someone's hands raising.
So I have an announcement. This is Rachel on the Zoom. Can you guys hear me? I was hoping to announce this at our last meeting, but I couldn't get on. Operator error or something. But the Women in Organization of Women in Architects is having a symposium next Saturday, a week from Saturday, at the David Brower Center on the future of shelter. It's an all-day event. We have 4 guest speakers and 1 discussant coming in from all over the world. And you get 7 CEUs. Mike and Sydney were kind enough to get AIA National to approve this event, and also a lunch is served, and then we're having a reception afterwards at Caffeinated. So highly encourage, open to all, public event, to sign up. Should be a good day. Thanks. Bye. Oh, and I think we're also canceling our June meeting for because of the convention. So.
Rachel, how can people, if they want to follow up and look into the program you just described in more detail and perhaps register or whatever, what do they do? Where do they go?
It's listed on the Organization of Women Architects website. I can put a link in the chat, and it's also on Eventbrite. We're celebrating 50 years this year, so that's a pretty big milestone for women in architecture. But this is a public event, so it's our first kickoff event. I hope someone will join us. It should be a really good day.
I have a question. I see the name Andrew up there. Is that Andrew Lee?
Yeah, hi everyone. It's me.
Andy?
Yeah.
You are in the May small firm forum. Do you want to say anything about the topic?
You know, the audio is really not very good. Can you repeat what you just said?
They can't hear you two very well because they're further from the camera.
So can you hear me better now?
Still not great.
He wondered if you could say a little bit about your topic that you're going to speak on.
Oh, yeah, sure. Sure. So yeah, I volunteered to organize the lunchtime meeting next month. It's May 11th. And the topic is, it's a fairly broad one. It's basically just firm and project management, both on a kind of daily level and also, you know, on a more longer term kind of 30,000 foot level. You know, everything from, you know, what software you use to organize your day, to track your projects, to track fee, how you prioritize your time, what maybe old school tools you use to kind of manage your firm, things that journals that you keep, any systems you've developed. And that's basically it. And we have one panelist set up so far, a guy by the name of Alex German, who some of you may know. He does great work. And I think his office is in Berkeley. I'm actually still looking for a second panelist. So if any of you are interested, or if you know of anyone who might be interested in being our second panelist that day, please reach out to me. Because I think I'm about to be late. Sydney's gonna start getting angry at me. It would basically be like a 20 to 25 minute kind of PowerPoint type presentation that each panelist would do, followed by Q&A. And you can use the chapter's laptop, and Sydney will help you set it up for images, or if you want to have whatever apps you use running on the laptop, you can literally just show all the attendees what you do, how you keep track of your time, your fee, how you make sure you don't drop any of the balls in the air. So that's the topic. It's a little bit of a change. It's not really about design. It's more about how we do our business.
Thank you, Andrew.
Sure.
Okay, so if everybody's ready, let's start in. It's been a while that I've been wanting to talk about taking vacation. I mean, I like taking vacation, but I like talking about it also. And I just think it's really important as architects that we get away from our desks, our computers, our drawing tables on a regular basis if possible. And I know it's easy to say that. There'll be a group of people who say, well, yeah, I don't have the money to take vacation. I don't have the time. But I think that it's not about money. And it's all about time. Michelle was telling me a phrase that she says she's told me this before, but I haven't heard it before, which is, you want to say it? Well, that a man once said, or a person once said, someone famous once said, I can do 52 weeks of work in 50 weeks, but I cannot do 52 weeks of work in 52 weeks. And I think that's just really very telling, and we need to be able to take breaks, because when we take a break, you come back and you have a completely different vision on things. And so what I thought we could do today, and I really don't want to make this a soliloquy. If people want to raise their hands or want to say something, just jump in. And I have a very long list, as many of you probably have seen, because I just did this massive brain dump of all the things that I'm really interested in. And if we don't get through it, that's fine. It's like, I want to start from the 30,000 foot level and talk conceptually about what vacation means, and then get into a little bit of things about tips, that we can talk about, we can share with each other. I did not specifically want to make this a discussion of people showing slides of their trips, because that is absolutely getting into the weeds, and it's not what we want to talk about. It's more the idea of getting away. Whatever getting away means, that's the discussion. Want to say something about that?
And how to do it.
Yeah, and how to do it. So why is vacation important in shaping our yearly work-life calendar? And it's like, if you don't put it in your calendar to take a vacation, two things will happen. One is you won't take a vacation, because everything will always take precedent before you actually put it in the calendar. And the second thing is that when you actually decide to take a vacation, if you don't plan it far enough in advance, I've gotten to an age where I remember when it used to be that you could, like the weekend forward, you could decide you're going to go do something. It's no longer that way. If you want to go to a national park or even a state park and go camping, or if you want to go and go to a museum just to go to a specific show, you need to plan this in advance. And it's unfortunate, but it's a reality. So the more you can put that into your calendar ahead of time, the better you can actually have a better vacation. And then the other piece to this is that if you put it in a vacation in your calendar way in advance, then you have a chance of educating your clients and your contractors and your consultants that you will be gone for that 2-3 weeks on these specific dates, and they need to plan their lives around it. In Boy Scouts, which I've been involved with for many, many years, there's a saying that goes around, which is, I can't let your lack of planning become my emergency. And it's a real deal. You know, I married an Italian, and Italians and Europeans in general have it set in their lives that they take a month off. You know, it's usually August, and they take a month off. And so when we got married, I don't think it was written in the wedding contract, but it's pretty much written that 2 weeks is not enough.
No.
You know, and 3 weeks is a minimum. And I said, a month is too long for me. I can't do that with my practice, but 3 weeks, if you plan it well, you can make that happen. And so you kind of go, well, why 3 weeks? Well, if you want to go anywhere, you know, let's say you get on an airplane and you fly somewhere, and let's say you go to Europe or Asia or something like that, you're going to lose a day of travel time each way. You're going to lose kind of a day each way of just brain power because of the time differential and adjustment and all that stuff. And all of a sudden, before you know it, that's 4 days. 4 days out of 2 weeks is an intense amount of time. 4 days out of 3 weeks becomes kind of normal. And so that's what we kind of was planned. We do 3 weeks. We tell people way in advance. We let contractors know that we're going to be gone. And a lot of times contractors kind of look at me and they kind of go, wow, you know, lucky you kind of thing. But then they think about it and they go, wow, maybe I ought to be doing that, you know? And I have all the respect for people in construction, that it's like you have 1,000 people calling you all the time, every day, and it's intense. And it's easier for architects to take vacation than contractors, but I still think it would be good for people in construction to try and find a way to do that. So talking about putting it in your life schedule, I think is really important. The other thing is trying to prioritize this a little bit, finding a way that if you are planning this way in advance and you tell the clients that you're doing this, it might even be that you can use that vacation as part of working on their projects. And I don't mean working like drawing when you're over there, but just when you're in a place, you can be thinking about their work. And when you come back and you talk to them about your travels and how they relate to their projects, clients tend to be pretty excited about that.
You see details or, you know, that sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's happened all the time. It used to be that I would take pictures of all this, but now with Google, it's like, you can just like look stuff up and remind yourselves of things. So I was doing a stairway once and I said, wow, this is really kind of like the Laurentian Library steps in Florence. And they said, what? I said, well, not that grand, but the concept of these steps coming down like water and coming down into the space is something that's really interesting to me. See, this is how Michelangelo did it. We can do it a little bit like this on our project. And it kind of adds another layer every time you have these conversations with clients. So the last piece of this is like, how does taking a break help? Okay, so there's a story I always tell of a professor I had at Cal Poly. His name was Eric Bartiano, and he was Finnish. And he worked for Alvar Aalto. And he told us the story of how he remembers one day Alvar Aalto looked like a very old man who couldn't solve the problem he was doing on the project. And he was working away and working away and working away at the thing, and he just was getting more and more upset. And he looked older and older and older. Finally, he just said, screw this in Finnish. I don't have to say it. I don't know how to say screw it in Finnish. And he said, that's it. He took his skis and he went cross-country skiing for a couple of hours. And he came back and he looked like he had lost 20 years in the right direction. He was younger by 20 years. I got it. Got it. And he sat down and he designed the thing, he solved it. And I don't know, it happens to me all the time. Like I'll take a shower and in the morning and I'm thinking about my project, and just the act of taking a shower gives me that mental break. And wow, I didn't think of that. So I'm sure everybody's had this. And I look at vacations somewhat, that if you break out of something, all of a sudden in the middle of walking down the street and looking and say, wow, the way they dealt with that window, that's exactly what I've been trying to think. So I think taking a break is important, visually as well as mentally. So then the next piece on this is kind of taking a broader 30,000-foot view of our practice and trying to understand how to deal with the demands of, clients, consultants, contractors, employees, and how to form some overall set of priorities on this. So another thing that I think is really important is that when you're on your trip, you're not constantly looking at your phone and trying to answer things and feeling like if you don't always look at it, that it's going to create a problem. And I am guilty of this all the time. I'm constantly fighting with myself. But I think you have to understand that sometimes letting go helps a project. Letting go with clients and letting them understand means that they might actually take some responsibility for something. Sometimes we coddle our clients too much and they start feeling like we're the answer to everything. And if you let them know that for 2 weeks or 3 weeks you're not around, you'll be checking periodically. And if it's really important, they might get a response back. I think it's a good way of training them. And it's the same thing with contractors. Sometimes it doesn't work, and sometimes you have an emergency and you need to deal with it. But in general, if you can try and find ways to hold back on the constant availability, it's really important. And it's also important for you to understand that you are not the center of the universe all the time. That life actually does go on when you go on vacation. And I found 1,000 times that thinking that I would go on a trip and everything would go to hell in a handbasket, and I'd come back and it's kind of like, wow, it's kind of like Narnia going through the closet and coming back. It's like things haven't changed. It's fine. Construction actually kind of moves a little bit slower than that.
The one thing that for me as a mom, a wife, an architect, to my counterpart was I was pretty much the one that had the plan for everything away from home that was still happening in the yard, watering, animals, garden, all of the little diddlies that you get roped into in the neighborhood and the community. So that, for me, that was a big of a category as getting the certification.
Yeah.
How to handle all that stuff.
Does everybody hear that clearly, what Linda just said? Because it's what Linda's saying is that it's not just the planning of the trip per se, but all the life events around when you're gone, dealing with watering and all the different things that you deal with the house and all that kind of stuff. And it's totally true. I'm really lucky that Michelle is our office manager and she's also our life manager. And she's kind of amazing at scheduling trips. So it's kind of like, if we decide we're going to go somewhere, she's immediately kind of like, okay, I got orbits here and I got to do, and it's just like looking at all the different stuff. And you want to talk a little bit about that? Like, what are some of the things that you kind of look
I mean,
at?
what Linda was saying is you don't only organizing the travel, you're organizing life back home, back at the office for the time you're gone. So you have to look ahead, see if there are deadlines in those 2-3 weeks that you're gone, things that need to be paid, you pay them before you leave, things that are recurring, you make sure that they are set up to happen while you're gone, that they cleaning lady, whatever it is that happens. that's just part of the plan. It's just something, and that's why it's good to do it in advance, because the way you have all your ducks in order when you're leaving, when you do it early enough in advance.
So,
I found a way to make space with the contractors on a project work pretty well. They just specify Marvin windows on their project.
that's good. Yeah. Yeah, if you do things that are a little bit out of the ordinary on projects, it tends to come back and bite you. So part of this is also that what we try to do is plan our life out in like 5-year segments. You know, we're planners, so we can try to plan our lives a little bit as well. So one of the things that Michelle's done is she thinks about what are the places that we should be seeing before we're like 75, and what are the places that we should see after we're 75. So like a place I've always wanted to go is Ireland, Scotland. And she goes, yeah, that's after 75. Because that's easier to get around. But before that, we're going to go to Brazil. You know, we're going to do these kind of places which involve physical activity. And so planning also the types of trips that you want to do in your life is something that you kind of look at over a long haul. And I don't know how many people actually think that way, but we've started to think more and more that way. It's like we have less years ahead of us than we have behind us. And there are a bunch of places that we want to go to. So we start making lists of the places that we want to see. You can also kind of think about what's the time of year for those places and see how you can then put it into your overall calendar. There was a guy who was on, I think he was on 60 Minutes, Charles Carroll, and he had his own show of traveling in America. And he wrote a book called Traveling in America or something like that. And what he did was he took his 12 favorite places in America, and there were towns. And each of those towns had specific preferred times of the year. And like there was a place in Vermont that was perfect for fall, you know, as compared to some of the other places in the spring. And so this book he wrote was about his favorite place to go to and the time of year they want to go.
So there's 12 chapters, 12 months, each
Yeah.
month a place.
We have a contractor that we work with, who I highly recommend, who has a large sailboat, and he decided he can take off 3 months and sail to Hawaii and then up to Alaska. And before he goes, he's having an introductory sail in the bay with his boat with architects that he works with, chance for everybody to get to meet each other, a couple of clients, and have like a community event out of his sailboat, and then he's going to go off and do this for 3 months.
That's totally cool. So the idea of your trip then also becoming kind of a community event is kind of a cool thing. I went when I was in school. I went to Japan for Christmas break because I'd been saving up money to go to Denmark, and I ended up getting a scholarship to go. So then I had this money I saved, and so I'd always wanted to go to Japan. So I went with this friend of mine, and we took a ton of slides, and then we had a show at the school, and we just opened it up to the school, and we showed the slide with a couple projectors and doing this whole kind of multimedia thing, telling people about Japan. And you know, in 1980, Japan was kind of a different place. And so the idea of sharing, something we'll get into a little bit further down on these things, like how do you share, why do you share, do you want to share, that kind of. So creating a 5-year travel plan as part of a life plan is something that we suggest is a really cool thing to do. So the next piece on this, how can travel, domestic or international, add layers of meaning to your building projects, elevating and deepening the journey for clients in shaping their spaces? So we have conversations with all of our clients about about it's just part of our life experience. And so it's really kind of interesting. And it doesn't mean it has to be, Europe. We do landscape design where we talk about, well, when we went out to Arizona and this rock formation that we saw on arches and kind of thing, kind of ties in with this, and people relate to that. And then the other thing is having clients tell you of their favorite place to have gone to. And if you have a little bit of that common vocabulary and language, it makes the project just that much more deep and more meaningful. And so, I said, how can we use items we've seen, experiences we've had to include in our projects in our daily work habits? That's a little bit of what that's about. The other aspect of this is when you are thinking about going on a trip, how can you combine that with things that are happening in your profession or things that are happening artistically or something else in your life? So for instance, I just made a list. This list was brain dump. But the AIA convention's coming up in San Francisco this year. And last year it was in Chicago. We actually went to it and we used that occasion to hang out with a bunch of our friends from New York. And so we kind of met there, and it became a different kind of experience because we planned it ahead with them to meet up in Chicago.
And also we added days to visit the area.
Yeah, exactly.
And that the idea is to, that there is a convention, a show, you organize a trip there with, and then you have the 2 days, 3 days, 1 week of whatever the convention or the show. And then you add days and you visit the area. So, it becomes a semi-tax deductible trip, first of all, which is really nice. And a vacation at the same time. Tax deductible vacation, the best time.
Yeah, so the first thing we do when we say we're going to go someplace is we look up at what's going on at the local museums of that place. Are there certain exhibits that we would like to see? Because there's nothing worse than going to a museum and finding out that a really cool exhibit just ended 2 days prior. And that's happened. So that's what we do. We look up at the thing. So for instance, in New York, we know our son's going to New York for a trip to meet up with some of his friends. And Michelle just saw that Yayoi Kusuma has a exhibit going on through all of the botanical gardens in New York through October 31st. And so our son would not know that, but because Michelle is constantly kind of looking at stuff, she just makes these lists and she says, well, that would be a cool thing to do. We do that with every place we go to. And so some of the lists that I put down were AIA convention, the CRAN conference, which I actually haven't gone to, the residential conference, MDC conference. I don't know if you guys have been to the Monterey Design Conference, but it is absolutely cool. And it's every 2 years at Silmar. And if you're driving down to that, you can plan that on the way down, you stay at some places instead of just jamming down there and jamming back. One of the things we found is that the hostel experience has been really cool. It used to be youth hostels. Now they're no longer youth hostels. It's been bought out by the American Hostel Association or something like that. And there are really cool places. So just going down to Silmar, there's a killer hostel in Santa Cruz. There's one that's totally cool in Monterey, 1 block away from the Monterey Bay Aquarium. And you can kind of plan your trip around going to those places, and it's really not that costly. It's very cheap. I also added, I'm on the Frank Lloyd Wright Conservancy mailing list, and so they're constantly sending out. There's a conference in Portland this year, and so if I'm not going to it, I'm not going to go to this one. I write down the places that they talk about in their email, and I have little lists, and then I also take Architect Magazine and Architectural Record, rip them all apart, and I keep, oh, that's that's in Portland, I need to make sure I have it, so I write Portland on it, put it in our Portland thing, so next time we're gonna go up in that area, we add that to our itinerary. It all kind of takes a little bit of planning in advance. We'd like to go to the South by Southwest conference, we haven't been to that yet, but it sounds completely cool. I had wanted to go to the Aspen conference, the design conference, and now it's morphed into something else, it's kind of like a TED conference thing. And I think it's overly expensive, so we're trying to see what are options to those things. At the Monterey Design Conference, we ran into a guy who's from, he was from Colorado, and he said that what he's done is he looks up all the different chapters in the United States, and if they have
AIA chapters.
the AIA chapters, and they find out if they have design conferences. And he said there was one in Southwest that was totally cool. It was the equivalent of the Monterey Design Conference. I went, wow, if it's like the Monterey Design Conference, I absolutely want to go to that. And so there are these kind of layers of reality that I don't even know about, that if you just kind of like open yourself up to it, you can find some of this stuff. We also go to a storytelling festival in Nevada City.
I mean, that depends on what everybody's interests are.
Yeah, but just to say that
Whatever your interests are.
if you want to kind of go and take a trip that's just a road trip, there are places that you can be going on it. Like people we know go to Ashland almost every year for the Ashland Shakespeare Festival. So the idea being you can combine your trip with conferences that are in the area. Anybody want to add to that before we go on to?
We really like when our road trips, we always love to see the roadside attraction. The weirder, the better. This totally entertainment kind of blows your mind away. But what, the populace is thinking out yonder somewhere.
Yeah, well, there's actually a couple of books out.
Oh, yeah.
Roadside
Yeah,
attraction.
yeah.
The big hot dog, yeah.
Right. So they're going to have.
I think what you're saying, Alex, is really fascinating. And I feel a little bit on my own, somewhat alienated in this sense. My work is intense, like all you guys, right? And it can be very stressful at times, can be tiring. And so when I go on vacation, I mean, it's not a criticism of what you're saying, okay, it's a different approach. I don't really look for stimulation. I look for leisure. And so that's what I'm trying to do is unwind. And I rebuild my strength by doing that. And it took me years to realize it. But the kind thing you said about 2 weeks a week is key, because it took me a while to realize that I need a leisure vacation of at least 12 days. Because after 12 days of that, just being not involved in anything related to my work or like that, the 12 days of yeah, I can't wait to go home and get back to work. It just dawned on me, that isn't an effective vacation. But it's leisure oriented, not stimulation oriented.
So that's an incredibly good point. And we talked about that back and forth via email as well, that we're very type A. And we tend to want to pack in as much as we can when we go to places. Also because we keep thinking, well, we may not ever come back to this place. So that's our bent. It's our filter. But most people that we know are the opposite of that. They actually want to just get away. And getting away can be sitting next to a pool and drinking margaritas and just chilling out, or it can be getting on a road bike and riding your bike for miles and miles and miles.
That's exactly what you're saying about Paul also. And he's going, skiing like that. I mean, there are little things you can do on a daily basis that are also quite a story. We have a little thing, somebody wants to sit down and play guitar. I have to work in the garden, that's just me. But it gives me new energy.
Yeah. And
But there is a difference between a daily, mini recharge versus a longer period of time. And I think especially for people who are creative, to have once in a while, if they, a week, 2 weeks, where you're not dealing with the nitty-gritty that architecture involves, the contractor, the details, but that you can just really kind of free your mind, I think it ends up making you more creative. Because creativity takes time, and you can't just, be creative, right now. It just, you have to nurture it. And I think if you take some time to not be involved with the daily, details, it really helps recharge your overall creativity.
And so when you do it, as you say, and you come back, and now you're back, okay? Are you still gone for a while, or are you now back in your world here and working at optimal value?
When I come back, I don't have a choice. I have to jump back in. Because when I'm gone 3 weeks, it's like, it's piled up. And I just have to just dive in and deal with it. So no, I'm not gone.
Does it feel refreshed and restored?
Yeah.
So
And
sorry, I wanted to ask a question that's kind of related, because I kind of agree with everything you're saying. But I have a question related to something you were talking about earlier, which is, training your clients. And then I guess sort of related, what you do, like what systems do you have in place to sort of deal with the emergencies or minimize the emergencies? Or, like the idea of taking 3 week vacation sounds fabulous to me, but of course I have massive fears that it's going to be a disaster. I guess, my most recent vacation went okay. The one that I did in like last June was like kind of a disaster because, I got these comments back from the building department that were like horrific. And, it was just like impossible to relax with these, comments that could possibly just kill the project. So I, just like, as an employee to someone else, it was pretty easy to go on vacation and just like forget about everything. It's not my problem. But, when the buck stops here, then it's much, much more difficult. So I'm just kind of curious how you deal with that.
really good points. So we have a couple of employees and we have, these are employees we've had for many years. And so we have empowered them to be able to take on, at least on the short term, answering some of those things. And so when you have plan check comments coming in, they take the first pass at it and try and see, kind of blunt the trauma of the plan check comments. But if you don't have employees, it's just you, which, believe me, I've been there. It's something that you just have to kind of take it in stride. What's going on with plan check comments, this is a whole other conversation, but what's going on with plan check comments is they're just getting gnarlier and gnarlier and gnarlier. And so you have to make a personal decision about how effective you want to get by it. It's crazy how bad plan check comments have gotten.
Because it's still outsourced now?
Yeah, because it's outsourced mainly. And so the outsourced people feel like they have to show that they're doing something, and it's horrific. And then it's also that people are less trained. And so when they're less trained, they are more intense. They don't know how to do gray. It's all black and white,
Yeah.
And gone are the days where you can just redline things with a plan checker and be done with it. And so it's a different world. So I think I'm not minimizing what you're saying. I completely get it. But I do think that you have to kind of step back and look at what are you doing with your life, and what is most important. And I know that sounds cliche, but it's completely true. That if you wake up every day thinking that, oh my God, this is going to be horrifying and this is going to be horrifying, it doesn't help you have a longer life. So I don't have an answer to it, but
Right.
I do you have to take it in perspective.
Yeah, I mean, the more of those, the one idea I came up with was like, okay, well, maybe I need to plan it so that I turn things in like the day before I go on vacation. That way it's not possible to get plan check comments while I'm on vacation. But
We have done that. We have done that.
you have done that.
We have done that. And also with billing, we've had a whole thing, like we do not send bills out to clients like on Thursday or Friday. we wait over the weekend and send it out on Mondays or Tuesdays or Wednesdays, because I cannot stand the BS coming back over weekends. But the client say, what, that kind of thing. And so we plan those things out, you know, kind of shape your expectations.
So you build one by that snail mail.
Yeah, we bill on them. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, that's the other thing, is that snail mail used to be really cool because it just took things longer, you know? Yeah, you know, clients are expecting instantaneous results these days.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I mean, that's the other problem with a type A client. Like I had type A clients that would work on their own vacations. And so then, of course, if they do that, they expect me to do that, which is just incredibly obnoxious. But
Well, one thing that you can always say is that you're going on vacation and you will not have much Wi-Fi access. It will be intermittent. That's, we always put that in our message when we're gone. Like,
right.
we have, you know, I don't know what the word we use, sporadic access to email and Wi-Fi. So
Right.
sometimes, and then sometimes we don't, and you know.
Yeah.
We can't right away necessarily.
we as architects have a lot of fear of standing up to clients too. I just noticed it. I used to think it was just me, but then I realized it just, that's kind of the way we are set up, you know, it's kind of, you go through architecture school where you go to crits and you get used to this critiquing kind of thing, you get used to being kind of submerged under some of these people. And so then you get these clients who just by their nature tend to be fairly powerful people because they've gotten successful enough to be able to afford you. And so part of that is that they set up their lifestyles that suck, you know, and I don't want to have the lifestyle of a bunch of my clients. I really don't. And I think you have to be careful about that. Yeah, so the client who works on the week on their vacations. In fact, sometimes you can say some of these clients, that's the only time they really have time available to work on the project is when they're on vacation, which is
But
problematic.
the one thing to realize is that for your clients, their project is not work. It's their home. Right, it's leisure. So it, you know, if they're working on their work is one thing, but when they're working on evenings or weekends on your work, for them, it's their fun part of life, is redoing their kitchen or their new vacation home. So for them, it's not work. For you, it is. So they can do it on a Sunday, but for you, it's work. You do it on Monday.
Yeah, we make sure not to
You
answer them
answer on
back.
Monday.
Like we see the emails coming in over the weekend,
Yeah.
but we don't answer them.
Yeah.
We just,
I just rented a project, 20 Gs, and we're going on a 5-week vacation. And I know right now that I'm gonna get planted comments while I'm in. And so I just have scheduled in my mind, then I'm just gonna take a little time out and deal with it. And then back in vacation.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can't do that.
well, so that's another way to do it, is that you go on a trip knowing that you're going to have to take a break from your trip to do work. That's fine. The problem is when you just do the dribs drabs, where every day you're constantly working. That's just a bad thing. And so, yeah, no, it makes sense. Very few people can actually take 3 weeks off without, you know, just unplugging, and that's hard to do.
It's always apparent.
That's,
So how did you
That's
do it with
another
your
topic.
with your 3-week vacation? Did you like do a week off and then like a day on, a week off? How did you do your 3-week vacation? How did you plan your own work during your 3-week vacation?
The way we usually do it is that every day, and well, if you're in a place where there is a difference in time zone, that helps because already, like if you're in Europe or somewhere else, half the day, it's night. So you have a certain amount of hours where the emails comes in, and Alex usually takes time, you know, either in the morning or at the end of the day, depending on where we are, to check his email and answer all of them. So, you know, it's like a half hour, because, you know, when you go through, if you do it only once a day, you're not constantly looking at your email and answering, you just sit down once. In about a half hour, you can answer all your emails. And that's how he does it. it takes about a half hour a day to just go through his email and answer them.
Yeah, but what I also do is I prioritize things that actually need answers.
Yeah.
Compared to just stuff. And I try to not continue to chatter while I'm on a trip. So if I see certain things are going on and they're going in the right direction, I just stay quiet about it. And so, I look every day at my stuff, like Michelle's saying, but I don't respond every day to all that stuff. And I respond like maybe once every 3 days. Because the problem is if you respond daily, then people feel like but if you respond every 3 days, the people get it, that you're not aware.
I actually have a tip for that one, which is this boomerang program that you can put in, and it will you can write your email then, and it will program it to send it out like a few days later or whatever. That way, you can get it off your mental load, but then your client doesn't receive it for however days, so you can train them properly to not bother you.
Yeah, I mean, that's
cool.
that's cool. I haven't used Boomerang, but what we do is we put them in draft, And then we have a pile of stuff in draft that we can deal with.
Getting to the question of email versus telephone. In my practice, I have almost never talked to anybody on the phone. It's all in writing and it's all email. But I would imagine if a person, their style is telephone oriented, then the interrupting effect is greater.
Yeah, we're only email on trips.
In general, when you run a business, you need to have everything in writing. I would be kind of surprised if anybody does everything by phone because.
Also,
Theory.
also because if something really bad kind of happens where a contractor is just effing up on something, doing one phone call of a WTF phone call to the contractor, well placed, can have a lot of gravitas. And I've had to do that before, you say, hey, I am calling from France because I am this upset about this. And I've done that, and it has quite an effect, I'm always trying to have relationships with contractors and consultants that work on a very mutual respect kind of a thing. But periodically you work with someone who doesn't get that, and you have to kind of well place your upsetness periodically.
Would you say that having the employees helps the whole vacation process or makes it harder? I would assume it makes it easier having employees.
Oh,
Both, I'd say it's both, because on one hand, it requires more planning because you need to leave having 3 weeks of work planned
Right.
ahead for your employees. Otherwise, suddenly you're paying for a week or two with people not having anything to do, and that you don't want to do that. So it requires an additional level of organization. But then you know that if a call comes in, there's somebody there to answer the phone, anything happens, there is somebody that knows, that is in the office, even physically, to just, take care of it. So in that respect, it's nice. It has its pro and con.
yeah, I mean, it has pro and con, but it's definitely a net positive.
Yeah.
Having at least one person who can kind of be the referral person for those things is really important. Oh, and speaking of referrals, that's happened to us a bunch of times also, where a person calls up or emails us about a possible project. You're not going to wait 3 weeks on that, but it's important that you put down on your email saying, I will be gone, and I will be
Yeah,
getting
it's
back.
the automatic reply.
But it's amazing to me how few people do that. I mean, it's mind blowing to me that and even people in the city do this a lot too. It's like you realize they don't actually tell you they're going to be gone, and it's mind blowing.
Well, you cannot do it in advance. When you put the automatic reply, it usually starts the day you leave.
Yeah, but there are people who don't do that.
Yeah.
Nuts. So if we want to move on to a little bit of budget, time, money, tips and stuff like that, see where we go on that. one of the things that Donald and I talked a little bit about also is the difference between going to different places or having a place that you go to over and over again. And the difference between the two, and there's no value judgment on which is better. I mean, they're just different. For instance, my sister just retired. She's been a teacher her whole life. And she's very much into having things figured out completely ahead of time. And so she every year would go to Maui, to a specific place, and have a specific drink at a specific restaurant. And it's, it's just the way she is, and that's not me.
That doesn't explain you.
Huh?
That does not explain you.
No, and but for her, it was her way of reconnecting with herself. And that's a little bit of what we talked about. It's like, there are a lot of people who don't want to overstimulate themselves when they're on a trip. They want to recenter themselves. And to recenter themselves, there are people, some of our clients, who have bought a cabin or built a cabin with us because they want to have a place that they go to every time to recenter themselves. When I was growing up, my family had really good friends who had a cabin. And it goes to one of my father-in-law's favorite sayings, which was, it's not important to have a boat, it's important to have a friend with a boat. And so it's the same kind of idea with a cabin. And so we used to always go back at the same time every year to this cabin. And that we got to borrow from our friends. And it became a place where we had family memories that we built upon every year, Michelle's family did not do that. They would always go to some other place. They'd like to go to the beach down in southern Italy or in Sardinia and just hang out. But they'd go to different places all the time. And the thought of going back to the same place made her cringe. Because she wants to have new experiences. And I think it really depends on what you want to do. But if you want to do a cabin, for instance, instead of a vacation, you want to have a place to go to, there are issues for me with that. We have friends who have a cabin at Bear Valley that are continually working on their cabin. And in the snow, they're continually shoveling the snow.
Well, the main reason, aside from, of course, economics, that's number one, but also I never really tried to get a second home because I know that Alex would spend his vacation remodeling the second home and working on it, so that would immediately become a non-vacation, so that no, we're going in somebody else's house, so you cannot touch.
And some of us have that problem with our main home.
Well, we have that problem with our main home. That's why one home is more than enough. We don't need another one.
Yeah.
So, Alex, how do you feel about your family having gone the same place every year? I mean, mine did, and they're priceless memories, but I don't do that for my son, or, I wouldn't do it again.
Yeah. So we used to always go to the same place and we loved it. We knew exactly what was in store for us. We had the board games there that we were going to be playing board games and all that stuff. And I love that. And I there's a part of me that kind of misses that. But on the other hand, what we've done with our own sons, we have two sons. When they were small, we would go on trips with them and we would go do road trips. And so one of our absolute strongest memories of family memories was we took a car trip from Yellowstone up to Glacier, renting a car, and we were listening to Bruce Springsteen songs in the car, going up and back, and to this day they talk about that, and they like the trips that we've taken, so they don't know differently. Yeah, so in my own lifetime, I had that experience. I have this other experience now. And I tend to grow and prefer this particular experience.
And how do you manage the memories? So, when we were kids, I had a Brownie box camera and it took 12 pictures. We waited a week for the pictures. Now we're all walking around with movie cameras in our pockets and stuff like that. Would that become an integral part of sort of story memories for later revisits.
Yeah, so that's an interesting piece to talk about. And
That's number 5 on the.
number 5, but I could talk about it right now. And
Well, we thought that could almost be like a separate presentation.
I'll touch on it for a second. First of all, John has said that he would give a class in travel sketching in September, I think he said, which would be completely awesome. I'm going to be the first one in the room for that one. That's kind of cool. I just had a weird experience that Michelle and I said, okay, we're going to take the slides we've got and we're going to scan what we can. And so they limited us to 500 slides in a box, you know. You can get another box if you want to, but we said, okay, let's see what happens. Yeah, it's expensive. So we said, okay, we're going to just do the 500 slides. Start going through and think, wow, this is going to be impossible. And I used to take tons of pictures of architecture. And Michelle was always going, take it with people too, you know, it's like, take some people pictures and, oh, I'm taking the architecture pictures, I need to document this stuff because I need to show it to clients and all this kind of stuff. Well, things have happened since then, you know, it's like now, instead of having a picture of the Laurentian Library in a slide somewhere, I now can just Google Laurentian Library and there it is. And better pictures because better daylight, you know, all that kind of stuff. And so that whole thing I don't need to do anymore. And so I went through all these slides and I was just going, wow, trip to Bali. That was a great trip. What are we doing with all these pictures? And I just started throwing them away. It's just throwing away. Save a few that I might print up in the bigger pictures. I don't know if I'm going to do it or not. But it's like, it's really affected me as to how I'm now going to be doing other trips. And I love to watercolor and I love to sketch. So I'm realizing that for me, it's more meaningful to draw than to photograph. The problem with that is it takes more time to do that than to just take pictures and kind of run around taking pictures, you know.
Well, I think one of the valuable things is what you leave for your family. My aunt traveled extensively, had a picture book, a photo book of every single trip she was on. But it would have been meant, none of that meant anything to me, meant tons to her. But for you, leaving sketches for your son, your grandchildren, whatever, that's just a wonderful memory.
Yeah.
I found in travels that to do sketching in an environment, it actually drew in the people around them, and they would look at it and then would get into a conversation. It was such a lovely thing. Whereas taking a photograph is something that's somewhat removed, and it wasn't anywhere near as engaging with the you know, people that were there. And so I always found that really, if you had the time, it was really fun and engaging. And you found out so much more about where you were.
You also see things completely different when you draw. Yeah. So I teach architecture merit badge for the Scouts, and one of the requirements is that you walk around your neighborhood and that you sketch something at some place. And so all these Scouts have never sketched before. And so what I tend to do with them is I take them to the campus, walk them around the campus, then we go to like the mining building. We sit down and I have them draw the mining building. And I said, I don't care what it looks like. We're not talking about beautiful drawings. We're talking about seeing. Look at this, you know. And without exception, every Scout that's done this, they look and they go, wow, I never even saw that the arch creates that kind of a shadow and that kind of thing. It's just a whole different world. So drawing, I'm sure John will bring up this thing, is a whole different world. And bringing people in is really kind of interesting too. Because like when I sat there drawing, once you see people,
yeah, it's lovely. It's really lovely.
it's kind of cool. Yeah. The taking pictures of yourselves on vacation is really important too. And so as it turns out, of all the slides that we took, the only ones that we're saving are the ones,
Which is actually
us and,
either one.
yeah, and our kids, you know. As far as videos and movies and also, I don't do that at all. I mean, at all. And it actually really bugs me. It's just me. It bugs me seeing people when they're on trips, taking videos of stuff. It drives me insane. Because I'm thinking, what are they going to do with this? What are they going to do with this? But that's me, that's my value judgment. Yeah, go put it on Facebook.
Alex, I just wanted to add in on that. The only time I do video is when there's music or there's something about the place that has sound. So I do it just to capture the sound, birds or whatever. That's the only time. Anyway, don't keep going.
That's a very good point. And
I would take in some videos sometimes, exactly when there was music, like when we were in some game.
a guy in our office just showed us a video he took under a waterfall because he wanted to show us the water kind of thing. But my take on that is it's not the same as when you're under the waterfall. So I prefer just a picture of it kind of thing. So a few other things to talk about on that. On terms of tips is think about the physical requirements when of trips that you want to take. I touched on this earlier, that if you do want to go and climb Machu Picchu, do it sooner rather than later, because it affects the altitude affects people differently than others, compared to going and looking at museums, which you can grab a wheelchair if you need, that kind of thing. But my sister-in-law and my mother-in-law are in Washington, DC as we speak. And my mother-in-law, who's in her 80s, found that she can basically just get a wheelchair anywhere she wants. And so now, instead of thinking twice about maybe not going and seeing that museum, she now can do that. And my sister-in-law is pushing her along to see stuff. So think a little bit about the physical requirements of that and of the different places you want to go to. I also wanted to say that seat of the pants planning doesn't always work as well as people think. We have a bunch of friends who say, my life is so planned out that when I go on a vacation, whatever happens, that's fine if you want to do that. But if you are at all thinking about seeing things, you are going to disappoint yourself when you go to a place and you find out that, oh yeah, Mondays they're closed and now I only have Tuesday. It's like, seat of the pants planning doesn't work all that well.
Just a little aside on that, we have a nephew that just visited from Switzerland, and I had all kinds of ideas of places for him to go and an itinerary and everything. And he says, no, I'm not interested. I want to make up my own list. And he used ChatGPT. I'm not sure what question he asked, but it was something to the effect of, I'm really into movies made in San Francisco. Can you give me a tour? And he found this bus that drives through San Francisco and they drive to the locations where the movies are and show clips of the movie when you're looking at it. And so that was his, and he actually wanted to go to a park somewhere in Oakland that I had never heard of. He's never been here before. And he found out about it on ChatGPT, and he found out about through this local woman, Jenny Odell, who is kind of like this urban archaeologist that likes to discover hidden places behind other places. And anyway, you never know.
Yeah, I mean, everybody has their own kind of thing that they want to do.
I'll ask you more about chat. I don't know how to use this.
The other thing is that balancing planning ahead, you need to be able to balance planning ahead with being flexible. And that things.
With leaving some holes, so not everything needs to be planned ahead. You want to leave empty spaces to be filled at the last minute and have things that are planned ahead, not plan every single minute of a trip, but also not.
And be flexible when it doesn't work out, it's like, it doesn't work out. So the two things that relate to that are, when you set up an itinerary, try not to do all of Europe, or do all of Scandinavia, or do all of Italy. Try and take pieces, and for your trip that you're gonna have, let's say you have 2 weeks. Doing all of Italy in 2 weeks is bound to be a problem. So try and do it where you do Florence, Milano.
Well, you don't want to
Venice,
lose a lot,
Venice.
basically, the overall idea is to not lose a lot of time of your trip in logistics. Every time you go from one place to another, I mean, unless it's a beautiful scenic, train ride, but, you're losing a day of vacation because you are moving from one place to another. So that's something that you want to minimize in your trips.
And depending on where you're traveling, logistics are not totally viable. You might miss a train. And then if you miss that train, you have to wait till the next morning to take the next one. So it's a really big deal. I'm always telling people, just take less, pack less into your itinerary. Second thing is, speaking of packing, take less with you.
Yeah.
It's amazing when we see people just, they have so much stuff, and
Overhead bin, that's it.
yeah, yeah, I mean, if you could do it with just a carry-on, that'd be awesome, but, keep it simple. Realize that you're gonna be carrying stuff with you everywhere you go. And sometimes you're gonna be running to catch another train or catch another plane flight or something like that. So it saddens us when we see people are packing so much stuff. And, carry with you a credit card. You can, if worst case scenario, you can buy something if you miss something. But don't take
We're
double.
deciding, when I visited New York for the longest time, I was going there for a week and a half, and I wanted to maximize my stay time. So I made a black and white copy of the subway map, and then I marked in color on it all the places that I wanted to go, and I started to look for the grouping, so I didn't have to take zigzags all the time. So I might pick up a pen at the special pen shop downtown Manhattan that was right near a museum I wanted to go to. So I spent a day doing that, but it saved me more than several days.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. And we do that. It's like, if you're in London and you want to go to a place out there, look at all the other things that are in that area so that you're not doing this exact thing. The other thing is places to stay. Michelle has gotten really into Airbnbs, trying to see what's available that way compared to hotels and stuff. There's so many more ways to find places to stay these days than it used to be. Look up at that.
And related to that, we're going to do 5 weeks. Makes me nervous, the idea that our house is in for 5 weeks. So we've arranged for an acquaintance to stay for 5 weeks. How do you manage being away from home for a long time and not worrying about bad things happening in your home?
Well, we're not gone for 5 weeks, we're gone for 3 weeks, and the bad things happen. We ask our neighbors to pick up newspapers or mail in case it hasn't been stopped. We stop all that stuff, but sometimes it doesn't work. So we have a neighbor who checks and does that.
Well, another thing that has come up, a lot of people who do that is to do house exchanges, which cuts down on the cost of your vacation considerably because you're not paying for the lodging. And, and at the same time, you have someone in your own house. And, I used to think that you needed to have some, amazing house in an amazing place to be able to do an exchange. And it's not the case. We've been in homes of people that tell us that they exchanged their home, which are, the last one we visited was outside of Davis, was like in this new development, like it's totally.
Tract home.
Tract home outside of Davis, and these people that live there, they go on vacation with this home exchange all the time. I'm thinking, who would come here for a vacation? But they've been all over Europe exchanging their house for houses all over Europe. So
There's also a website called House Difference. And it's based on the idea, well, some people have pets. And so there are a group of people who
Yeah.
qualify who come to stay in your house. You don't charge them, they don't pay you, they take care of your pet, if they have something.
But that's the other way.
The other thing is staying with family on trips and traveling with groups. So just to say a couple words on that. So what I found is when we go to see family, we end up not seeing the things that we want to see. This is me being type A again. And you have to take that into consideration. That yeah, it's cheaper to stay with family if you're at some place or at a friend's house if you're someplace. And that's another type of experience, but you have to take into consideration that you're going to lose time in not being able to see the 4 museums or whatever. You know, it's like take all that stuff into consideration. It's like an entire evening will be taken up going to a friend's house and having dinner and catching up, and that's a cool thing to do, but it also precludes other things. The other thing is traveling with groups. We don't do it. But we have friends who love to travel with groups, and we just find that it's like designed by committee. Travel planning by committee is a camel, and for us, others think that it's enriching. You know, that you get share experiences together as a group. We did a kayak trip to Baja, and with a group, and that's the kind of thing that we
That's
enjoy.
different, because that you cannot do alone.
Right.
That's organized by outfitter. That's
Yeah.
completely different.
And it was totally cool in the evenings to just hang out,
That-
drinking cocktails over a campfire and stuff. That's the only kind of group thing that we got to do. The other thing is talking about organized trip planning and alternative tour trips. So we haven't done this before. We've done it a couple times that we'll take tours that have been that you can sign up for. And I tend to not like to do that, but when we've done it, it's always been amazing, the stuff that we've learned. So I don't know if you guys do that, but going to a place and doing a walking tour in the middle of the city, Chicago was great for that. And it's the entire architectural center there gives amazing walks, and San Francisco has them also.
I have a friend that wrote a book called Hidden Walks in the East Bay. And I did a sketch walk. So we picked several points on there. We brought our sketch books along and walked each point that we kind of pointed out that people usually don't know because they're backyard paths and things that walk by.
Yeah. So it's cool to plan those out in advance. Also, there are things like green tortoise. I don't know if you guys have done that. My mother-in-law has done that a whole bunch of times, where there's a big bus, it's painted green, it's called green tortoise thing, and they take trips, and it's groups, they take all the seats and take them down, they sleep in the bus. And the people, the guy who's the driver and the assistant are also amazing chefs. And you get to go to places that are off the beaten path.
Are they still open?
They're
Yeah.
still operating.
I didn't know.
They
Yeah.
go to Alaska, Mexico, all over the United States.
Cuba, you can go by bringing medicines and things like that. And you can go in for free on trips like that with reduced prices. There's a whole bunch of different alternative ways to do things like that. I could go on, but I think we're at like 120-ish or 115. I don't know, you guys want to keep talking or?
We go to 1:30.
We go 130. Okay, so anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I would just say, in terms of research, you gotta make sure your research is current, because remember traveling to the Philippines once, and I had an old Lonely Planet guide. Didn't realize, it was 4 or 5 years old. I didn't realize that there was a revolution going on where I was going through. And so the bus was boarded by these military guards to take us through. And by the time we got to, I think it was Luzon province or something, where Marcos was, I stayed in one of these gorgeous old retail spaces with a housing above and then almost a square block below the retail. The landowner asked me if he asked me if he knew I was American and if I wanted to sell him any guns. And so it would have been an opportune, I mean, I wasn't into armaments or anything like that. And I had no idea like which side is this guy on, so, yeah, so it's a moral of the story is, it's a good idea to look at current information.
Yeah, we have in our house a pile of Lonely Planet books, and, all that stuff's been kind of superseded
Yeah,
by everything available on Google, and, but we still kind of do that. The other thing is, travel related to different world events and religious events, that it's a whole other thing to think about is, when you are going to, or want to go to a place, like to say you want to go to Scotland, think about the Edinburgh Festival that's every year. That's kind of amazing, the Edinburgh Music Festival. Well, actually, the music festival, and there's the theater festival. And then you can kind of plan, either you can plan around going to that or plan to avoid that, either way. Depending on what you're interested in. But there's a lot of different things that are kind of out there. One of my deepest memories was being in Barcelona with a bunch of friends from college and going to high mass, midnight mass for Christmas. And I'm Jewish, and so I've never been to midnight mass before, and it was absolutely magical. Being with some friends in a place far away from home, that sense of awe came out. That was just kind of amazing. So, and there are people who do the Compostela pilgrimage. Yeah, the pilgrimage walk. There's all kinds of things like that you can do. And that might be something that's really interesting to you. The other thing I'm interested in is doing a studio workshop where you can go to like Phoenix and do a ceramics workshop for a weekend or for a week. And then while you're there, you can go see Taliesin West, Cosanti, the latest things that Bruder built in Phoenix. It's kind of cool to use that as a base and add a few days before and after on the thing. Same thing with cooking classes. We have friends who've taken cooking classes in Tuscany, and they add days before and after their trip. But the part that they remember the most is that time they had cooking together, in this faraway place. And food just tastes different when you do that in the middle of Tuscany.
I have a question. How many weeks of vacation do you aim for a year?
I aim for 3.
Well, we
3.
usually do one big trip that is 3 weeks.
Yeah.
But then we do usually another week, in some other time, like we always close the office between Christmas and New Year's. Every year, the office is closed, so we always have that week of vacation. And then we have the 3 weeks in summer. And then sometimes we do long weekends here and there, maybe not another big trip or vacation, but,
Yeah, if
4 days.
if you did a sum total, it might be 5 weeks, over the whole,
time off.
over the
Yeah.
whole year. That's another thing is that when I came out of school, the first office I worked at closed the office from Christmas to New Year's. And I didn't even know that was a thing, but they did that. And I really liked that. And so I decided if I ever were to have my own office, I would think I would do that. And then I ended up having my own office. So I said, I'm going to do this. And you just close the office, and there might be a couple people that have an issue with that economically, but they have found that they really love having that
We've
time.
never had, we always tell the employees that, if they want to do some work, they can, because we
Yeah.
can't tell people
To
that
not
they
work.
have to
Yeah.
take an unpaid week off. We cannot afford to pay them for a week that they're not working, and we can't tell them to not work and not be paid. So we say, if you really want to work, you can, but the office is closed. And in 35 years, we've never had any employee, work during that time. They were all just happy to have the week home. And sometimes it's 1 week, sometimes it's a week and a half. It depends on where New Year's and Christmas fall. Sometimes it's a little more than a week. But anyway, in that period, we've always closed the office, and it's worked fine.
Yeah, we've also tried not to be hypocritical about the way we think about vacation compared to people working for us. And so we've always said, always from day one, 35 years ago, that if a person wants to do a 3-week trip, a 3-week vacation, they're fine. You know, we pay for the 2 weeks, and then that week that they take off, that's fine. You know, we don't pay for that time, but they can take it. We always try to make it very, very clear to people that we think vacation is good. And we actually have it written in our little office manual that vacation is good. And the reason I write that is because at that same office I was just talking about that I worked at, there was a guy who never took vacation. And when he was forced by the office to take a vacation, he would stay at home for that week and just kind of work on stuff at home. But he actually over time kind of developed a mental issue with the whole thing. It's just because he was always on, always working and didn't take a break. Finally, they actually years later had to just let him go because it just became an issue, because then becomes a thing with everybody else in the office. This was a 35-person office at the time. And so you had the one guy who's working all the time and it feels bad to everybody else. They start feeling guilty, or why is that project moving forward when you guys aren't, and that kind of thing. So we really try to push the notion that vacation is replenishing. It's a good thing for everybody. So on that note, there is a whole section that I didn't touch on about how to document your trips. So we talked a little bit about that, but I kind of felt when John and I talked a couple of days ago about that he would give a class, and I thought it would be better to kind of push that onto that thing. And there's a sidebar discussion to what are you really trying to do when you go on a trip, and are you trying to document it? Are you trying to have memories that you're trying to find a way to hold on to? What is the best way to do that? And I think that's kind of what you're doing.
Yeah, it's books and stitch diaries.
Yeah. Or also poetry, writing music. You know, there's all these kinds of pieces that you can kind of think about as part of that whole experience. So I think I'm good.
That was a wonderful presentation, Alex and Michelle. Thank you very much.
It's a fun topic.